Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing an Evilswarm deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys, because this deck has one of the coolest boss monsters in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the form of Evilswarm Ophion. This card handles so many boss monsters running around in the format by stopping them from even being able to be summoned, like Dragoons, and even the new Phoenix Enforcer. This card helps out so much in this deck to be able to stop cards from even touching the field, and it's just a fantastic card overall. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name in the description of every single video, getting a signed card to mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to our Patreon along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Evilswarm Kirkion. So Kirkion is a really good card that has the ability that if this card is on your side of the field, then you can banish a Evilswarm monster from your graveyard or an Elswarm monster, and then target an Elswarm monster in your graveyard and add that target to your hand. And also it gains the ability that this turn, you can activate the effect to normal summon another Elswarm monster. It's a really great card, and the reason they actually say Elswarm on these cards is because they work with Steel Swarm monsters as well, but usually in this deck you're only going to be running Evilswarm monsters. We then play 3 copies of Evilswarm Caster, which gives us an additional normal summon, which is a really good effect just to be able to give us that additional normal summon to get out 2 monsters to overlay into a copy of our boss monster, Ophion. So for the other cards that we're playing in the deck, we're playing 3 copies of Evilswarm Mandragora. Mandragora is really good because if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card out to your side of the field, essentially being a miniature Cyber Dragon to give you another level 4 on your side of the field. We then play 2 copies of Evilswarm Thunderbird. This card is really good at dodging because it has the ability that during either player's turn, when anybody activates an effect, you can banish this card, and then during the next standby phase, you special summon this card back to your side of the field with 300 more attack points, which is a really good effect just to be able to give you that additional attack boost and have a monster that can avoid being destroyed. So the next turn we can just normal summon any of our Evilswarm monsters to be able to overlay into a copy of Ophion. We then play 3 copies of Evilswarm Heliotrope. Heliotrope is really good in this deck because it has the ability that basically it's a Garnet. It's really good with cards like Unexpected Die to be able to go in for some really amazing plays, because then all you have to do is normal summon any Evilswarm behind your copy of Unexpected Die to be able to get your plays really rolling. So I love this card as a 3-of. I did consider playing Rescue Rabbit in here, but I found that if I used Rescue Rabbit once, then it was pretty much, if I draw another one, it's pretty much a card that I can't use anymore. So I just decided to run Unexpected Die over the copy of Rescue Rabbit. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're playing a single copy of Dimensional Fissure. Dimensional Fissure is a great card in this deck because we don't care where our monsters go after they are sent off the field, because we're usually just overlaying them into a copy of Ophion and then detaching them to get a search. So this card really hurts the opponent a lot more than it hurts us, which is a really good effect to be able to banish any monster that's sent from the sent to the graveyard is removed from play instead. We then play 2 copies of the Evilswarm Spell card. This card is really good because all face-up Evilswarm monsters you currently control are unaffected by other spell and trap effects, which is a pretty good effect, but I do like playing this card as a 2-of in this particular build. We then play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness, because Allure of Darkness is going to let us draw cards by banishing a dark monster from our hand. This card's really good. You play a lot of dark monsters in this deck, so this card is usually always live. We then play 3 copies of Unexpected Die to round out this spell. The Unexpected Die is basically here because if you control no monsters, you can special summon a level 4 or lower normal monster from the deck, which is always going to be your copy of Evilswarm Heliotrope that you're going to be special summoning off your copy of your Unexpected Die. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps, which we play a very trap heavy build. So for the traps, we're going to be playing one of the best cards in the entire game right now, and that's a single copy of Imperial Order, which is why I'm not playing quite as many spells as I used to in this deck. Imperial Order is really good because it negates the effects of all spell effects, but then once per turn, during the standby phase, you must pay 700 life points, and it's not optional or this card is destroyed. It's a really good effect to be able to basically stop your opponent from activating any spells, and usually we're activating this on turn 2 because we really like to go first in this deck because it's a trap heavy build. We then play a single copy of Infestation. This card is really good as well because this card lets us once per turn shuffle 1 Elswarm monster from our hand or face from our side of the field into the deck, and then you get to add an Elswarm monster from your deck to your hand. Evilswarm. It's a pretty good card to play as a one-of in here. It's actually searchable off your copy of Ophion, and it's just an overall fantastic card. We then play a single copy of Macrocosmos. Same thing as kind of Dimensional Fisher. We don't really care if our cards get banished, so you're using this card to be able to hurt the opponent to really go in for their plays. If they're playing a graveyard-heavy deck, then this card and your copy of your Dimensional Fisher is basically going to stop your opponent's entire plays with just a single card, which is why I play this card as a one-of in here. We then play 2 copies of Trap Trick. Trap Trick gets us to 2 of our most powerful cards in the entire deck, and basically makes it so we're playing 5 copies of every single one of our traps that are normal traps, which is just really good in this deck. We play 3 copies of Eradicator. This card is really good too because it has the ability, and it's one of my favorite cards in the entire deck, because basically you tribute a dark monster with 2,500 or more attack, and if you do, you declare one type between spells and traps. Look at your opponent's hand in all spells and traps they currently control, and all cards they draw until the end of their 3rd turn after this card is activated, and you destroy all those cards of the declared type, which is really good because if you know your opponent's playing a very trap heavy deck, you can flip this and then totally destroy their strategy by just calling traps. If you know they're playing very heavy spells, you activate this and it just stops all the spells. And you play so many 2,500 or more dark monsters in this deck, it's like easy to activate this card and just be able to stop your opponent's entire strategy. We then play 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute is really good because this card destroys every single monster on the field. We can protect our monsters with the effect of the spell card, the Evilswarm spell, which is really good to be able to activate this card to protect our monsters, and then be able to activate this card and be able to destroy all the cards, and then use the Evilswarm spell to be able to protect all of our monsters while destroying our opponent's cards. This card's really good in the deck, and it's searchable off of Trap Trick. We then play 3 copies of There Can Only Be One. There Can Only Be One is an insanely powerful card in this deck because each player can only control 1 monster of each type, and if a player controls 2 or more monsters with the same type, they must send some to the graveyard so they only control 1. This card is really, really good in this deck because all of our monsters are different types, so it's very easy to actually work around this card. With cards like Caster, you basically just can't have more than 1 of the same name on our side of the field, which is totally fine for us because we play so many different ones in the deck. We then play 3 copies of Solemn Judgment, which could be changed out for Solemn Strike if you want to. I really like this card in this deck because it basically says no to anything, and it's a fantastic card to play in this deck. So that's it for the traps, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we have some really amazing XZ monsters in here. First being 2 copies of Ophion. Ophion is such a good card. It's just a 2-of because usually you're only going to summon it 1 to 2 times in a game. And it has the ability that it takes 2 level 4 or lower Elsworn monsters to summon this card. And then when this card has XZ material, level 5 or higher monsters cannot be special summoned, which handles cards like Dragoons, it handles cards like Phoenix Enforcer, it even handles cards like Herald of Perfection with Drytrons. This card helps out so much in this deck and just stops so many combo plays that your opponent has to really think about where they're going to go to out this card, and we have all those traps to back it up. But what this card also does is once per turn, you can detach a material from this card to add any copy of an infestation, spell, or trap from your deck to your hand, which is a really, really good effect because we actually have 2 targets in this deck for this card. We then play a single copy of Evilswarm Bahamut. Bahamut has the ability to once per turn detach a material from this card, target a monster your opponent controls, and discard an Elsworn monster, and if you do, you take control of that opponent's monster, which is a pretty good effect to out all sorts of different cards that your opponent might have. I love this effect. I just wish it didn't target. We then play a single copy of Evilsworn Nightmare. This card is really good as well. It flips face down cards, or flips face down opponent's monsters, because when your opponent special summons a monster, you can detach a material from this card to change that monster into face down defense, which is basically a walking Book of Moon, which is really good in this deck. Play a single copy of Time Thief Redoer. This card is really good to be able to grab cards off the top of your opponent's deck, and depending on what you detach to activate its effect, it gets different abilities. If you detach monsters, you banish this card until the end phase. If you detach a spell, it draws a card, and if you detach a trap, you place 1 face of monster opponent controls on the top of the deck, which is a really good effect just to be able to get rid of cards, give you a draw, or be able to banish itself, kind of like Thunderbird. We then play a single copy of Tornado Dragon because it pops spells and traps, which is really helpful for this deck. Play a single copy of Baguska to kind of lock down the opponent. It's a really helpful card in this deck to be able to just throw this in defense position and be able to wait it out while we get a bunch of traps and a couple of cards to be able to control the opponent. We play a single copy of Abyss Dweller to shut down graveyard plays, which is really good. 1 copy of Number 60, because Number 60 lets us draw 2 or discard 1, be able to special summon a monster back from the graveyard or double the attack of a monster, which can get really big in this deck. We then play a single copy of Raider's Knight because it gets us into one of our really powerful boss monsters, which is Arc Rebellion. Arc Rebellion is really good because basically it can get really big. You use Ophion to kind of control the board, then you make Raider's Knight, and you use this card to be able to go in for game, because it gains the attack of every single monster's attack on the field, which if you have this on the field, it already starts at 3,000, and it can basically one turn OTK your opponent. We then play a single copy of Double A Zeus because you're playing so many Xyz monsters. This card is really good to just board wipe just in case you need to. If your opponent sets up a really crazy field, you can just make any XZ monster attack and then detach 2 materials off this and send everything to the graveyard, starting basically at 0 to be able to go in for all sorts of different plays, but it doesn't destroy itself, which is really good. We then play a single copy of Unicorn to spin stuff, 1 copy of IP Masquerade to make the Unicorn with during our opponent's turn, and then a single copy of the Steel Sworn Origin, because Steel Sworn Origin works really good with Torrential Tribute because it has the ability to, when this card is face up in the extra monster zone, if a monster would be special summoned from the X deck to a monster zone, it must be summoned to a zone this card points to instead. And then when this card points to a monster, neither player can target it with card effects. Also, it cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects. And then once per turn, when a monster on the field is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can special summon an level 4 or lower Evilswarm monster from your deck in defense position up to the number of destroyed cards. This card comes in very, very handy with Torrential Tribute, which is why I play it as a one of. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play with. If you guys have never played Evilswarms, you definitely should. It's a really fun deck that you can take basically any trap in here. If you don't see it, if you see a trap that you want to play in this deck, it works very well. And basically you're just trying to get 2 monsters on your side of the field to make a copy of Ophion and pass with a couple of back row set to be able to protect it. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.